Hi, everybody. I'm Ralph Benmergui. Welcome to Not That Kind of Rabbi, my regular podcast, where we talk about spirituality through the lens of human beings and what they do. Some are artists, some are politicians, some are just citizens of this world. And by the way, I'm very adverse to the use of the word taxpayers in any conversation. It is the commodification of everything and everyone. Oh, taxpayers, citizens. Taxpayers just have rights. They're customers. They expect good service, even if they don't want to pay for it. Citizens have obligations and duties. And one of the things I found in spiritual life and in religious life is the idea of restraint and discipline has pretty well evaporated from our world. And you can see this manifesting itself in this pandemic, that people are conflating freedom with fortitude, you know? I want my freedom. No, you want to do whatever you want to do, and you don't want anyone to tell you what to do. And one of the things about religion I've always found interesting is that in our time, in the time of the individual, as opposed to the collective, we are very adverse to the idea of being told what to do. Don't tell me it's Sabbath and I have to turn everything off and I can't go driving and I'm not supposed to work or do house chores, or don't tell me that. But think about it. If the entire world took a 25-hour sabbatical every week, think of it even in green terms, you would reduce GHG emissions in the world profoundly, 7% per week, by doing that, by just shutting it down, by just saying, no, I don't need to go here, do this, cook that. I can just be. In our religion, in Judaism, the one I'm from, there's 6 days of doing and 1 day of being. And if you could get that every week, that's pretty good. Instead, we sort of save it up for, when I retire, I'm really going to live the life I always wanted. When I get to the weekend, I'm really going to get to do the things I wanted. I don't know if that's a great idea. My dad was 65. He was 3 days from his retirement as a nursing assistant in a hospital. I went to his retirement party. I was working in Winnipeg at the time. I came home, I had my first kid with me, the little one of the first of four, and I had this kid with me. And I leave him at my mother-in-law's. I go to sleep that night and I get a phone call, and my father's had a massive stroke. 3 days from retirement, his bags were packed for a trip to Venezuela with my mother to see relatives. And that 3 years after that, he finally passed away from a series of strokes. So do you wait? Do you wait for this life to happen when you finally get to it? Do you put away the things that make you you to do the things that keep you alive? They're tough decisions. They're not easy. It's like when somebody says to their parents, I said to my parents when I was 18, you know what? I think I'd like to be an actor. My father looked at me like I was nuts. It was like, are you kidding me? We came from Morocco. We're killing ourselves here, and you're going to be a what? My mother, on the other hand, surprised me and said, oh, it's about time. Little did I know that being an actor was really not what I wanted to do, but set me on a course to do the things I need to do. So if you're waiting to live your life, I would highly encourage you not to. Even if I don't mean drop everything, throw your whole life away, change it. I'm saying start to yearn for the things and let your voice, your inner voice, tell you that yearning is real. And then who knows how it'll manifest itself. It might be small little changes. It might be some big change. But as the saying goes, you might as well be yourself. Everybody else is taken. So think of it that way. I want to introduce my guest for this week on Not That Kind of Rabbi. I have admired his music for a very long time. It spoke to me the first time I listened to it, not just because he's found this magical way to bring East and West into the same instrument, into the same voice. It's the way he did the songs. It's the way he approaches the fact that he is in the middle of something, not the only thing. I've seen him perform. I've listened to his music, and I've always wanted to speak to him. And luckily, through social media, I managed to go, I'm over here. Then, about 8 months later, he said, sure, let's talk. So I'm I'm happy we didn't have to wait 8 more months. We're here. Harry Manx is my guest, multi-instrumentalist, blues, Indo-Asian blues, folk legend. Is that right, Harry? Do I have it right?
You can call me any bad names you want, Ralph. I'm good with it all.
So where do you sit on the live the life you really believe in?
Well, I feel blessed. I would start with that. I feel grateful because the existence has been kind to me. It allowed me to follow my passions and to use those passions to hopefully make people's lives a little brighter in small ways or inspire them. And I suppose that's part of the whole blessing is that I have that desire to bring something to the people that's not any kind of catharsis on my part. It's simply maybe reflecting some of the beauty I experience in life. And I think people pick up on it. They give me that feedback.
When I watch you play, one of the things I always seem to resonate with performers like you is the lack of, and this doesn't mean the lack of musicianship, the lack of effort, the lack of push. Are you aware of that?
Yes, one guy described the show as a lack of artifice,
Right.
or effort to to push what I'm doing onto the crowd. I think that's a result of the fact that I discovered that I need to be into it for other people to be into it. So to that end, um, I put my head down and I dig deep and I go to that place where the music and I are there's no separation. And that's usually what people get into, and they call that, in fact, the Harry zone. Whatever that means to them, I'm not sure, but I
Yeah,
know what it means
really.
to me. It means getting into it, and don't worry about what's out there. Go inside and play that song.
So
Yeah,
is it letting go or digging deep?
yeah. It's probably a bit of both because, in a sense, it doesn't take any effort. Doesn't take any effort on my part, but it comes about when I can bring all my focus to the music and to the song and to feeling it. If I was to play the song and not really feel it, I think the audience would pick up on that. And it also sort of indicates, there's something about when I listen to music, I can always hear the musician. I can tell something about that person uh,
Right.
by what they're singing, how they're singing, their choice of song, their choice of notes. It's very revealing and maybe a lot more than we consciously recognize.
That's a vulnerable place to be.
Yes, in the beginning, I was a little, I always assumed the world of the blues was a bit, I don't know, living on the surface somewhat, at first. But then as I dug into it, I realized that the history of the blues is that, it's a soul crying out, to be recognized and to be heard. So I dug deeper into it and I thought, well, I'm going to have to wear my heart on my sleeve a little bit here if I really want to speak to the people, if I want them to hear me. And also, I like that in other artists. I like that when they don't hold back. They don't pretend to me that, they're something that they're not. That's where I'm drawn to them. So I use that as my reference.
When you said that just now, I was thinking there are some who can find a way to go by that, so that they can access that. But there are some, and for some reason, I flashed on Janis Joplin, and I thought to get there, she had to get lost.
Yeah.
She had to get so drunk, so stoned that all you could see was the rawness of her, right?
Yeah.
Like,
What you see basically is the alcohol and the heroin, because when you ingest something so much of something, it's that speaks through you, I feel.
Mm.
You know, in the same way that if you were a meditator, that might speak through you too. If you were tuned into consciousness or spirituality, that also would probably be seen through what you're doing. So it's very important that when I talk to young musicians sometimes, and I say you can only go so far with the music, and if it's feeling like it's hitting the ceiling, then you have to look at yourself and bring and dig deeper into that and bring that to the music. Then the music starts to take on a whole other dimension.
So, when it comes to your evolution spiritually as a person, give me a little sense of, I mean, you and I are, I think, almost exactly the same age. So, give me a little sense of, little Harry Manx moving through life, and little Harry Manx deciding a harmonica looked good and a guitar looked good, and then a really weird guitar looked good. Tell me about that.
Isn't it so easy when you look back at the trajectory you've been on your whole life? You can understand so much, like how one thing led to another. Um, I had my beginnings in the world of music as a fan of the blues in the 70s. You might know, I was a sound guy at the Elmo Combo Club
Right.
back then, and I toured with many blues bands and also bands like Crowbar. I was a sound guy for a while and a road manager, and so I got to know blues, and that sort of became part of my approach to music. But at the same time, I was originally attracted to, like, I was having issues like all people do when they're young, psychological things that I didn't understand, emotional things. So I got into psychotherapy early on, like Gestalt therapy, primal
Right.
therapy.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, my late teens. It's sort of the first step, towards knowing a little bit about your interior landscape.
Yeah, Arthur Janoff.
Arthur Janoff.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I also came to a point where I realized that I saw people in the therapy institute had been there for 15 years and they were still spinning their wheels.
Right.
So I thought, maybe there's a way to jump off this. And that's when I discovered meditation and was drawn to the idea of it.
Was it TM at the time, the
No,
Transcendental?
I got into Yogananda at
Oh,
first,
yeah.
autobiography of a yogi.
Yeah, yeah.
Came out early in I don't know, sometime in the 60s or 70s. He was an awakened being, and he sort of, that book planted the idea of India in me. And so I was sort of, I had these two strange passions, blues and India, and Indian music eventually. So that progressed over time, but I ended up going to India in the 70s.
You spent
And
5 years there, right?
well, I went back in '86 and I stayed till '98. So I was there actually
Oh,
12
wow.
years. I was 5 years with my teacher in Rajasthan.
Tell
Yeah.
me,
And
I want to know what are some of the things some of that journey. I want to understand that.
yeah, the first journey in the '70s was to India overland from London. I hitchhiked, I rode a bus, I did everything. I spent a year there just bumming around. Literally, I ran out of money. So I was just like, really, I didn't care. I wanted the adventure. I didn't care about the challenges that I had to go through. And I stayed that year. And I came back to the West. I actually came back to England instead of Canada because I'm also English. And I decided I would get my life together on a physical level, then go back and stay a long time because something about India was calling me. I could feel it, and it was in my bones.
What was calling you?
Um, I wasn't sure. I couldn't say exactly at that time. I
Uh-huh.
know the music moved me deeply. And I didn't meet any awakened beings on that first trip, but I met many sadhus who were kind of renunciants of the world, mostly of Hindu origins. And but I knew there was much more there. And when I went back in '86, I moved into the ashram in Pune, and I was there about 8 years.
Let me ask about sadhus, because there are people who believe that the way must be one of removing yourself from the mundane, banal, material world. And there's others, like in Judaism, that's not looked upon well. That's looked That's just no, no. You got to get married. You got to be in life. You got to have children. Like the
Yeah,
gooey stuff has to be in there. You can't just walk away. But
yeah,
but I have no judgment of either. I'm just really curious. So
yeah.
what did you learn about or for or against what that idea is?
Well, in that first trip, I was really in that sadhu mindset. In fact, I hung out with some of them up in Uttar Pradesh. Was that you shouldn't have any attachments in life, you know. But you know what? It didn't increase my spirituality. It didn't increase my feeling at peace. In fact, it had the opposite effect. I worried. I suffered. You know,
Hmm.
so that was a good learning, and I had to do that maybe to learn that. So I don't equate having nothing or doing nothing with spirituality at all anymore. In fact, I find that it's fine, and it's probably good to embrace the challenge of having a day-to-day life and having a
Right.
family and having work, because if that stuff can knock away your sense of spirituality, how much is that worth? How good is that? You know, how deep is that? So I'm one that embraces a full commitment to life, and that's not to say that you don't have to tread on a spiritual path. You do, but it's not those things that is the problem. It's what my one guru told me. He says, "Be in the world, but don't let the world be in you." Which
Hmm.
to me, like, you know, don't get over involved in everything. You have to be discerning about what is you and what is all that and what is all this. I'm pretty good now because I feel at peace. So I can, if you're at peace, you can be with all sorts of people in all sorts of places. It won't change who you are. It can't change who you
But then there's that other piece, which is there is no who you are. You know
are.
what I mean?
We have to use language, to say these things or to point at them. But you're totally right there. Pure consciousness, it's no who. It just is, and you almost have to let other people describe you to know what that
Yeah,
is.
because you can get all hung up on Harry, the people who talk about themselves in the third person.
Yes,
Harry Manx doesn't drink red
yeah,
wine.
no,
He
that
only drinks white wine.
that doesn't help the third person thing. It doesn't really help. But it's true that we don't want to get too hung up on the idea we have of ourselves, because
Yeah.
that's definitely the mind talking. Now, I definitely differentiate between the mind and the being. The being, let's call it the pure consciousness. It doesn't need any description. It doesn't need any good or bad or anything like that. It simply is there. The challenge for me is allowing that to be there and not getting lost in the ideas I have of myself or of my world around me.
Well, in the religious path, there's the idea of moving from the egoic part of our life, which often is the kind of, high octane fuel that gets us to take the gig that nobody wanted and do the thing that nobody wanted. And, that pushed us through. And when people just went, well, I can't really put you in a genre. And then you have to be able to go, I'm going to keep going here. So you kind of need that, you know, the I'm Harry Manx guy to go for a while there. But
Yeah, it's funny. No, we all have our, let's say, our personal identity, and the thing is, whether that is who you think you are or not is what makes the difference. I maintain, like everybody has to maintain a personal identity, but ultimately, I know I'm also pure consciousness, and so uh, that personal identity is not a big deal. It doesn't threaten.
but it's part of what when you just said we kind of need that, we do, because human beings need a particular, a universal idea,
Mm-hmm.
and then a particular way of being in that idea.
Yeah, I would look at it like the form and the formless. We need We have a
Right.
formless life, a formed life, and that involves everything around us, and also the ideas we have and the thinking. But we also have this formless existence, and I think there's maybe the goal of spirituality, to recognize and embrace that formless existence.
So you did 12 years in India?
Yes, sorry.
I sound like the customs guy on the way back. So, Mr. Manx, you did 12 years in India. What was that about?
Yeah.
Just stamp the thing, okay? You know, we don't want to get into this. What kept you there that long?
Well, at first I was living in the ashram, and I'd sort of was so good washing dishes and sweeping like everyone else, and it was just such a beautiful thing to become part of that community. And but then I realized that I still had my passion for music. I was a guitar player, and so I started to dabble with Indian music, and then that got stronger. Eventually, I moved to Rajasthan and studied with my teacher, Vishwa Mohan Bhatt, on a full-time basis. And then my
What was
journey,
the instrument? What was the instrument?
it's called a veena. The veena is like the oldest instrument in India. It's sort of a cross between a sitar and a slide guitar.
Right.
Hmm.
So you use a slide. Your fretboard
Play it
is
in the
more like
lap.
a sitar.
Yeah, I
You
play it
play
in
it
the
in your
lap
lap.
like
Yeah.
a Hawaiian guitar, and it has 20 strings, and I slide the bar on it. Playing it is one thing. Knowing the Indian music is also another thing.
I would imagine that there are times in your life where you've just put that on your lap and just started playing and you are gone.
In the beginning, I used to hypnotize myself or put myself in a trance when I was practicing, and I'd find, 5 minutes have gone by, and I'm there just loving this silent space that I discovered. Yeah, it's very, and people who listen to it, they also have that
Yeah,
experience. That,
I get that when I'm listening to your stuff. I'm just like, we could just do this for another, I don't know, 124 bars. That would be good.
because the last years before I came back to Canada in 2000, I was playing in the ashram for meditations. And so I was sort of in that, that mode of playing so as not to disturb the silence. It may be to increase the presence. Uh,
Right.
and that sort of worked its way into my blues music. When I showed up here, I found people were getting really spaced out. And in a good way, they like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They could be drawn into it that deeply.
Yeah, because you can perform at people,
Yeah.
you can perform with them, and you can just perform in a way that there's really very little separation, right?
Yes. 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 I often feel that, I don't know if it's different from other artists, but I feel the show is about the audience and maybe all of us. But it's definitely about the audience and getting them drawn into something and keeping them there for the entire show. That's my thing.
I know people drift in and out of meditative practice. Do you drift in and out, or do you find yourself regularly meditating?
I now I'm on the path of Advaita, which is a school of spirituality in India. It was sort of some of the people that are well known for that are Ramana Maharshi or Papaji, and now Muji, who's quite popular on the internet, Muji. But Advaita path is not a path where you do regular meditations. It's sort of a more a process of recognizing what you are and what you're not. For
Hmm.
instance, the activity of the mind, uh, less identification with all that, more like watching all that pass by and becoming aware that you are that one watching that pass by.
Yeah.
So it's just establishing yourself as more as pure consciousness. And it's not something you practice for a fixed period of time. It's a way of being all the time that you need to be with that as much as you can. And of course, you will lose it sometimes, but whenever you can, bring yourself back to that place.
With performance with people, there are performances where a person comes off stage and they can tell you exactly how it went and where it was good and where it was bad. And I always kind of saw that as not a good sign, because I thought, well, you just watched yourself perform and exactly. And when something, there were other times, and even in my own performance experience, where I'd come off a stage, and I'm not one for being disingenuous about that minute after you walk off. I came from stand up, so you either were funny or you weren't, right?
Yeah.
So I come off and I will turn to someone I know and say, was that all right? Was that okay?
Yeah.
And I'm not fishing, for compliments. I'm just like, I was so there, I don't know what happened, and it may have sucked. So when you're talking about this, I'm starting to think, knowing that you're watching it pass by and letting it go probably leaves you sometimes going, I don't know how it went tonight.
Exactly. Perhaps, yeah, exactly like that. And it doesn't matter. Um,
Yeah.
I don't care much, I do what I do, and I hope it sticks. I leave that up to the people. But mostly, the feedback I get is it's working for them.
But that's big, doing what you do, and because the need to be loved and the vulnerability of being one who gets up in front of people to do something that they do can really lead you to a place of needing reassurance in one way or another. And, applause is applause, and a dead audience is a dead audience.
Yeah,
They're hard to miss.
yeah,
But as a spiritual practice, I find music that is sincere and honest in its approach is disarming. You're not trying to, like, you don't have pyrotechnics going off,
yes. So many ways to present music. And I think it always, as I say, you can hear the musician in the music. It always is sort of representation of who you are. I mean, I couldn't play heavy metal music, if my life depended on it. Though I'm not
I'd
against
love to
it, and
see
I
it.
quite like it. But you know,
My, I'd love to see that. White Snake with.
oh, I met, at one festival in Australia, I went backstage and there was Steve Vai, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
with a few other wonderful guitar players doing the 3G thing. He was sitting there on the sofa. I don't know, I have no filter. I went straight towards him. I said, "Amazing, Steve Vai," and he was so happy because of my sort of sincerity, impromptu sincerity. And he stood up and shook my hand and said, "How you doing?" And yeah, I can be a fanboy any day with some great players. No doubt.
So you said something at the beginning about blues, that it sometimes, or it was, surfacey.
Yeah. Well, then again, it depends on who's playing it. If you want to be just background music in a bar and you're not playing anything that's unique or original, perhaps, and you're just plowing along with the song because you learned to play the guitar or the bass, whatever, then it can sound like, if you ask people about blues, they have a kind of cliche ideas about it, what the theme of the song is and the nature of the song. Um, so you really, it's not to say the art itself is like that, but it depends who's playing it. Because some people play it and just a few words or a few notes, man, it's right under your skin,
Right.
moving you, So it can be something delivered on the surface, or it can be something delivered really from the guts or from the heart.
So I'll give you a parallel in Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah.
Mm-hmm.
You're not supposed to study Kabbalah unless you're over 40, are
Mm-hmm.
completely conversant in Torah study and Talmud study, which is the commentary on the Bible, and that you have a family, you're married and have a family. whatever
Hmm.
way, shape, or form. But you're not supposed to look, start studying this stuff because it's not right. And
Right.
when you said about that thing about blues, I thought whenever I would see, except for Jeff Healey,
Yeah.
whenever I would see like a 20-something blues player, I think, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. You
some
can.
sorry here. You have to have
Yeah.
some suffering here.
Yeah. You can parrot the art, and on the surface it all sounds good, but there's some lack of depth to it, and people can be impressed by speed and dexterity to
Yeah.
a point, but will they let that music change them or change their life or impact them emotionally? I'm not sure.
Do you, so if you worked the Elmo doing sound, did you do sound for Wayne Cochran? Do you remember Wayne Cochran, the
Yeah, I
blue-eyed
do.
king of soul?
Yeah. No, I mustn't been there during that time, but
Oh,
I do.
too bad. He was upstairs and Prakash John was playing bass and
Oh yeah.
slapping away.
Oh
And
yeah.
first time I'd ever seen a bass player break a string. It's like, how the hell did you break that? That's just like cable, man.
Oh man, Prakash John, he's like a legend around Toronto. He's
Oh yeah,
a
great
great
player.
player.
Well, you said before those who play the instrument and you feel them coming through he
Yeah.
was coming through the instrument. There was a whole
Yeah.
bunch of people like that.
And that's you have to find a way to get yourself into the music. But it's true that too many have only can get past their mind and their busyness by getting really out there, with the drugs and the booze. Um, that's that'll do it for some people. It'll speak to some people, but not to everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, it's a crazy dance, right? That we're
Yes,
in. It's a really crazy dance.
yes,
And I sometimes feel we have too much time to think about it, and sometimes I don't think we have enough life to think about it.
yeah. That's a fair assessment, and I find that in these times where there's a lot of adversity, challenges. I think that sometimes some great things come out of these situations. Like nothing that's really of value has changed for me in my life until I've had a crisis or reached a point where I couldn't carry on in the old way. So I see those kind of challenges and that adversity as a blessing in a way, because without it, sometimes things don't change. And people whose music reflects some deep history, Woody Muddy Waters.
Yeah.
When he just played a few notes, you could hear that his life hasn't been all fun and games. He's just right there for you. So I'm not against life getting tough for people, and I think it sometimes brings out resources they don't even realize they have.
So you said something big where you said, you're at peace.
Yes.
Okay, there's a lot of people, Harry, who would pay a lot of money to be at peace at this point in their lives. So let's not just drive by that sucker, shall we? um, how how'd you get there? What's it like?
Well, I didn't get there, and you can't get there. In fact, the I that I used to be maybe is not here, and as a result, the peace is here. If you know what I mean, you have to get past who you are or who you think you are. That's kind of that's the cost. Let's say you have to disappear a little bit. Your ego and your ideas and your beliefs and all these things, when they fall away a little bit or when they're recognized for what they are, then what's left is peace. And many people arrive at that place through their religions, and you could probably imagine it's not necessarily the religion that gives them that; it's the kind of the effort they brought to it or the changes that it inspired in them. But I can say that I don't have a lot of ambition anymore. Maybe it's the age, or maybe it's the journey I've taken. But I'm pretty good with quiet things, sitting in the morning and looking out at the trees. I can do that a lot, and I don't need to fill my moments. There's a sort of a peacefulness there, and everything else is icing on the cake, whatever comes to me. I told my agent he was struggling to find work for me, and I said, no, no, I'm good with whatever comes my way. Uh, I, I don't mind. And that's the other thing is gratefulness, that when that arises in you, that brings a sense of peace because you're not unhappy about what life has given you, or you're not wishing it to be any different. You're happy with this, that can't be taken away, something internally. Yeah, you can take the work away, you can take whatever, but there's something internally that's never going to be taken. And if you discover that, it's very peace giving.
So, what place do people in relationships have in that?
Well, those are great places to struggle in, for starters, and that's the situation for many of us. The relationship inspires us to have to look at ourselves and to see the best and the worst in us, and through that, changes come about. You can realize that whatever is around you, it's not necessarily you, and when that awareness comes into play, then you can stop trying to influence the world around you so much and just sort of sit with what is. Acceptance is an interesting thing because it's not that I agree with what's happening, it's more that I accept that this is the situation, and there's a certain peaceful effect from that.
So, when somebody comes over for a cup of coffee and starts talking about how screwed up this politician is or how bad this thing is, and what where do you come from in that conversation?
I don't have a lot of energy for that. I mean, I can listen, but this is mind activity. Unfortunately, a lot of that is mind activity, and it's fine if you're an awakened being, you can do that. But if you're not, you can know the whole world, but if you don't know yourself, none
Yeah,
of that, nothing's worth much.
yeah, monkey mind.
Monkey mind, exactly. And all the spiritual practices point towards that. You don't have to stop the mind. Just be clear that that's not who you are. This kind of dialogue about, well, he said this and I said that, and what does he think he is, and blah blah. This kind of thing, we often think this is who we are, but if you would just step back from and watch all that, you'll see that it passes by, and you're still there.
You're still
So
there.
you know,
Well, John Kabat-Zinn, wherever you go, there you are.
there you are. It's so much truth to that. So maybe discovering who you are is pretty essential thing in life. As a goal, I don't think there's any higher goal than that. You can be famous, but when you go home and lie in your bed, who are you then?
Yeah.
With nobody writing any adoring words for you. And if you get attached to those adoring words, you're also going to get attached to the
Yeah.
guy who says you're all full of shit.
Yeah. I used to say that to people all the time. They'd get a great review, and I said, remember that you just believe this guy, because
Yeah, right.
the same guy in about 4 years is going to say he's lost it. He's lousy.
Yeah,
So don't
yeah.
attach. I would go home to my kids, and
I had a very wise friend who said to me, what other people think of me is none of my business.
Yeah, these are hard things for people. Would you think if you lived in the middle of Manhattan or London, or that you could hold this center that you have now, or do you think that being
Yeah,
in a natural setting is a necessary piece of finding peace?
no, it isn't at all. Because what you are, you have to be everywhere you are, anytime you are. You can't say, oh, yeah, now I'm peaceful because I'm at home with the trees and everything, and tomorrow I'm in the crowd. No, in a way, it's good to go in Manhattan to really know if that peacefulness you think you are. As Ramdas said, if you think you're awakened, go spend a few weeks with your parents.
He was a nice Jewish boy, Ramdas. He
Yeah, he
understood.
was.
He knew how bad it could get.
He said the first, when they had him committed, it wasn't because he was walking around in robes calling himself Ramdas. It was because he was giving out money.
Yeah, exactly. What an
Some things
interesting life he
won't
had.
work.
Yeah.
For some people won't work. But yes, you have to be as you are everywhere. That there's some gurus in India that would give their sermons in the marketplace, and they would tell the people, you have to find that place of stillness, which is not going to be affected by all this, and then it's true and it's real. It's not dependent on anything outside of yourself. And but mind you, having said that, you come to appreciate the quiet and the nature so much more when you're at peace. Because if you're not, it's just another place to get on the phone and
Yeah.
grieve about something.
Start the leaf blower, get the
Yeah.
chainsaw, right? Drive the pickup somewhere to get some stuff. Yeah. That's what I see. I go to somebody's cottage or something and I think, oh, it's very nice here. And then the guy on the next dock is.
The world will never be perfect enough for you to.
Well, that's the thing. We keep thinking if we just had the right setting and the right
Yeah.
moment and the right
Yeah.
words were said to me and nobody phoned me with upsetting news, that I'd be great. But
Yes.
that's all from without. What you're talking about is a journey within.
Totally, yeah. And I think that's really something important. That's an important, very important point for all of us. And in fact, if people would spend a bit of time and find that place where they're at peace, it enables them to move in the world a lot easier. Things bother me a lot less. I remember times way back the touring, and every fool I met would bring out the worst in me too. So that also inspired me to try to become focused or grounded or realize the truth that I am. That would enable me to move in all those places without being blown by every little wind that passes by.
It's a hard thing to do.
Well,
until I guess you practice enough, right?
Well, somebody said, the truth is very simple, but people are complex. So there's that. It's more about losing what you're not to be what you already are, I think, than trying to achieve something. This is another maybe false idea that we awakened people have to achieve something, but in fact, they're just not what they're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not something you acquire. It's not something you cling and grasp for. It's something you have to stop trying.
Yeah. But these kind of things, they're only apparent when they're apparent. So
yeah. And life can be very confusing. We're at an age now where this is autumn. There are leaves coming down from our tree.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Where does that take you?
Well, I'm always sort of in the moment. I'm more in the now than not. So I have no need really to flash back on the past and to try to project myself in the future. I think a lot of that leads to anxiety and emotional stress and all these kind of things, But in the moment, this moment is always working pretty well for me these days. And, even when it's not, there's some part of me that watches that it's not. So I don't struggle much, I've had my crisis, and those crisis points reached a peak that brought me over something, and so that's
crisis of health.
Also, yeah. 2 bouts with cancer and liver disease and all these things, which I've managed to. Well, I didn't manage, but they managed to be dealt with in a good fashion. And so it's almost like I went to the edge and looked over the cliff, at death's sea, And that itself can help you shift your priorities so that you really don't want to mess around. You want to make sure that you've attained everything your highest goals in life. You want to make
Yeah,
sure you attain that.
I'm always fond of saying this is not a rehearsal,
Yes, true enough.
right?
I often didn't take uh, awakening of consciousness seriously as a young man because, and rightly so, you want to just gain experiences and you want to live out, you want to live enough that you might get fed up with it and start to search for something that doesn't change, that's more constant.
Yeah, you got to be sick and tired of being sick and tired, I think,
Totally,
right?
totally right, totally right. And it's
It,
nothing wrong in that journey. I see, that it's a necessary part of the evolution. If you don't if you don't get enough of something, you won't be able to drop it.
I just flashed on, remember Nitty Gritty Dirt Band did Will the Circle Be Unbroken 1 and
Yeah,
2? And
yeah.
they were using takes, in the studio before they'd start the song, and John Denver was going to sing it, and so it goes. And they're warming up and getting ready, and somebody goes, "Is this one practice?" And Denver leans into the mic and goes, "They're all practice."
I remember, I had a show. I've done a few shows. We played the Kerner Hall together, me and Dave Lindley,
Oh,
great,
Dave
great
Lindley.
player. And I said to Dave, should we get together in the afternoon and practice? He said to me, practice is for cowards.
He used to come to the Winnipeg Folk Festival and just kick ass and
Yeah.
leave.
And he was so right. Practice is for cowards. I looked at that and I said, okay, Dave, I'm good. Let's meet on the stage. And, of course, if you feel like your instrument, you'll be fine with that.
Yeah, well, I like when blues and folk and those things become jazz, right?
That's what we call it when we don't know what it is.
Yes. Well, there's Lee Major, who was a broadcaster in Winnipeg, came up with the title for a show that was my favorite title of all time, which was Music to Listen to Jazz By. Isn't that great? Freaking great. I love that one.
I,
You know?
I love all kinds of music, and jazz is something that I can really get into when I'm driving. Sometimes I really just
Oh,
like
yeah?
jazz. It doesn't demand a lot of listening. That's the thing as a musician. I couldn't have music on if I was trying to fall asleep because I start studying the music. My
Right.
mind will go to it and say, "Oh, I know that chord. That's a G major seventh there. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, time change. Oh, that's
yeah.
away I
A
go."
bridge there? That's a little late. All right. Yeah, no, it can get pretty nutty.
It is.
Um, so
Yeah.
you said you had that look, which is a highly spiritually informative look at that, as you called it, that sea of death.
Mm.
Do is consciousness timeless and formless, and the
Yes.
soul continues, was here before, is here after, and is just, as Ramdas says, visiting in this spacesuit that happens to have Harry Manx on it. Is that what's going on here?
Yes, exactly. Well said, Ralph. Well said. Exactly that. Timeless and formless. You know, um, there's so little language to describe some things. You can kind of point at
Yeah.
it, and you can't talk about it as if I am that. That's very difficult. And yet, language sometimes is all we have to indicate something. People know uh, your level of consciousness, whether they're aware of it or not. When they meet you, they might feel like expanded, or they might feel more at ease with themselves, or not. They could feel the opposite. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. No, it can be like, hey, you can get defensive.
yeah,
Oh, don't you just have your shit together?
yes,
It's
yes.
like, okay.
And there's very few people that I would have these kind of discussions with because um, they're not discussions from the mind, about the mind.
No.
And when it's not about the mind or from the mind, there's so little to be said, really. But again, we just can point at some things.
In the Kabbalistic view, there's the four worlds that we live in at all times. The Asiya, the body, and you're grateful for the body still working in the morning. And then there's the Yitzira, which is the heart and the yearning. And
Yeah.
then there's the Bria, which is the thinking. And then the Atzilut, which is the imminent universal flow, the Shefa, as they call it, of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And you use this word before, intention, what intention you bring. So in Hebrew, the word is kavanah. So what kavanah you bring to this integration of all four, and the realization that we often move into one of these worlds for sanctuary, and often it would be in our rational age, it would be into the mind.
Mm-hmm.
I will talk my way in and out of this.
Yes.
See how many books I've read? Oh, I read the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying and the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I've read them both. You know, or you can be too much in the heart, too much in Yetzirah, and not be able to. So the integration, the body, you know, like God is in the laundry. So when you went to the ashram, and washing dishes became a spiritual practice, opposed to a chore, right? So it's that integration that I guess I yearn for, and I would imagine it is in many people's lives. A spiritual quest tends to fall right up to the top. I want to get hit by lightning. I want it all to change. I want to see the light, you know?
Yes. But you know, awakening is not for the seeker. It's from the seeker. And that's a realization that some people will be lucky enough to have in their life, you know, that this one that's seeking also has to disappear. And yet that's a necessarily part of the journey, you know, that's very necessary. It's funny, some people, we all use the word I, you know, and somebody was saying that I is the smallest letter in the alphabet, and yet the whole world hides behind it, you know. And we use the word I without really considering what it refers to. Is this I? Is this body or this mind that's talking, or what is it? You know, when you establish yourself as consciousness, it's hard to use the word I. You use it, but not with the same effort or the same meaning as many people use it. You know, you have to have something to refer. As we said before, you can't talk about yourself in the third party. It's just just a party trick. You know, it's confusing. But in some sense, there's a great truth to speaking about yourself in a distance like that.
As there's humility in it, right?
There is, yes. These kind of things are the effects maybe of consciousness, love, humility, kindness, compassion, empathy. All those things, you know, they don't come from ugly behavior and unconscious people. Those things, you know, they're really a reflection of a person's own journey, and if they've reached some level of consciousness. Too many words, eh, Ralph?
No, beautiful. No, lots of wisdom. I'm really appreciating it. You know, it's funny because I went to see you in Hamilton, and I sat there and I just thought, oh, good. I've never seen Harry live. I listen to his music all the time. It's gonna be great, and I had a wonderful time. And then I always intuited just by that performance. It's like, did you ever see J.J. Cale perform?
At Massey Hall, yeah.
So I was in a horrible cover band when I was a kid, and the guy who owned the Delta Theater in Hamilton happened to book J.J. Cale, and he was the brother of our bass player, so he let us open for him, doing, you know, "Time Won't Let Me" and all this stuff, just stupid, right? You know, who'll be next in line by the Kings, like just whatever, right? We're doing these songs, so we were up there doing that and all that, and it was a snowstorm, and so. David, the guy who owned the theater, was like, he's not going to show. Like, he's in Toronto, and like they're telling people not to drive. Really, no, do not drive. And about 25 minutes before he's supposed to be on, he walks in with the band, and my friend David runs up to him and goes, "Oh man, I can't believe you're here." And Cale looks at him and just goes, "Hey man, it's a gig." And then he goes, well, we didn't have time to talk about the setup. What do you want? He goes, I want a semicircle. He goes,
Yeah.
okay. And he starts setting up the semicircle. And he goes, so I'm putting you right there in the middle, right? And he goes, no, I'm second from the end over here.
Yeah.
Put that guy in the middle. And I thought, there's no ego here. This is, just J.J. Cale. Like what you heard is who he is, and he's just sitting there, and he disappears into the band. And when it's time for him to, lean into an SM58 to sing a little bit, he does it, and it's great. But it wasn't the J.J. Cale show, and I'm not coming, it's snowing. He was just there, and
Yeah, I saw that same tour, and at first I didn't know which one of the guys was
yeah,
J.J. Cale. I was asking my friend, which one was he?
yeah. And yeah, it's like somebody's singing. I know they are.
It's great to see, that he doesn't think more of himself than he should. He's just present with the music, and in a way, if the music is really pure, it's almost as if the person on the stage disappears and only the music is there.
Mm.
I think he had a lot of that. You heard that when you listened to him too, because he wasn't the first guy that would play, blues. But when he played it, it just had something very special.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say the same for you, my friend. That when I hear you, I'm not listening to just anybody.
Thank you.
I hear your voice when I'm there. Listen, I got to go, and
All right.
I really I'm honored that you spent some time with me. I always want to give a blessing at the end of one of these, and
Yes.
I bless the consciousness that you are. I bless the universe that we share, and I bless the music that comes from your soul and your heart and goes into mine. And I really appreciate it.
Amen. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Beautiful.
You
Well said.
take care of yourself, Mr. Manx.
That's you, brother.
All
Lots of
right. Take care.
That's beautiful.
Harry Manx, Manx. If you haven't heard Harry's music, please just Google the man and check out his music. It is a lovely combination of South Asian beautifulness and blues and some folk. It's really great. So I'm so happy that I got to talk to Harry, and I'm so happy that you've listened to this episode of Not That Kind of Rabbi. If you want to get in touch with me, at Ralph Benmergui is the easiest way to do it. Try the last name, mangle it a bit. It might show you, do you mean? And then you'll find me. So at Ralph Benmergui. And please listen to, how many do we have? 32, I think it is, 32 episodes of Not That Kind of Rabbi and counting. I love doing them. And if you know any sponsors out there who are thinking, hey, I'd like a substantial and interesting spiritual show, please show them the door to my office, which is virtual, and we will see what we can do. Love to find some sustaining partners in this wonderful endeavor that Toronto Mike and I do together. So you take care of yourselves and take care of each other, and look out for little pink stuffy toys. They're really weird. I'm Ralph Benmergui. Bye.
podcast has been produced by TMDS and accelerated by Roam Phone. Roam Phone brings you the most reliable virtual phone service to run your business and protect your home number from unwanted calls. Visit roamphone.ca to get started.